Welcome to season 3 of the Iceman Kicking Podcast. My name is Brett Arkelian. Kick your feet up, relax, and enjoy this episode of the Iceman Kicking Podcast.
So it's actually increased our punt return averages every single time that we've done it. You know, it's something that we do religiously throughout, and it's been paying dividends for us.
Welcome to the IMK Podcast, the show with cold questions and even cooler guests. And I'm ecstatic today because I have a show that's been 2 years in the making with Coach Sean Saturnio with me, the special teams coordinator at Army West Point. He spent some time at Georgia Southern. He spent some time as the head coach at Waipu High School. Did I say that right, Coach?
Waipahu, yeah.
Waipahu.
Close enough.
I know. I'm trying here. And over the last 2 seasons, Army has blocked 11 total kicks, most in the entire FBS. And he's the leader. And you guys may have blocked a few more this season too. Am I right, Coach?
Yeah. No, we did not. Unfortunately, we didn't block a field goal this year, but we had three punt blocks.
Oh, yeah.
Here,
So he's the leader of the Sauce team and the Sauce Team Mafia. Welcome, Coach Sean Saturnio.
Hey, peace be with you, brother, and to everybody else who's listening out there. So it's a pleasure to be chopping it up with you today.
Thank you. Thanks, Coach, for being on. You know, at this point, I don't even refer to you as Coach Saturnio anymore. I just refer to you as the block god. Whenever we're talking about, where's this drill from, whatever, I said, I saw it from the block god on a podcast or a teaching segment. So we're going to start with the heavy hitters here. Tell me a little bit about you guys are a block team. I love that aggressive mindset. What is the mentality that you're looking for from a guy? Like, what makes a great block guy on your team?
Well, here's the thing, too, that I think, to dispel some notions out there. A lot of people, when you come up in regards to talking about kids blocking punts, everybody talks about, finding that guy with the knack to do it. But what's interesting is over the past 3 years, we've had 9 punt blocks that were done by 7 different kids. So I truly believe that it's a skill that can be developed. Now, is it great? Now, some guys definitely have more of a knack than others, but I think you can drill from the very get-go on allowing them to just read on how to get off on the ball when that back stripe starts to trigger, all the way to where they got to finish at the end. And, it's something that we do religiously throughout, and it's been paying dividends for us. And on top of that, too, I think, when we're so pressure heavy, because of the byproduct of what you get, too, is that, everybody's got to stay in protection over there. So it's actually increased our punt return averages every single time that we've done it, which is, that's a little hidden thing you talk about. It's either, obviously we know how much a punt block can change a game, but it also the more pressure you bring, it also increases your punt return average.
Yeah. And that mentality, to be honest with you, Coach, is what got me into coaching special teams. I mean, I knew I wanted to do something with it, but even just watching, you spend a lot of time in high school football. Some teams just sit back there and it's like, man, that protection scheme is awful. No one pressures them. And then they kick a 15-yard punt and it rolls 30 yards. So I'm sitting back there like, can we just, key the back tip of the ball and slip, dip, and rip and freaking get after that punter? I mean, that is so key to setting up a return also, like you said. Do you, what is the mentality that you teach those guys, or what's the best way to drill it into them? Because you guys have found the sauce.
Yeah. Well, first of all, I think it starts off with us that we don't call ourselves a punt return unit. We're a punt block unit. And that's how we refer ourselves on our call-ups. It's, the return part is what happens when we don't get a block. That's how we view things. And, there's an expectation that I think the kids come in with is that, we want to be the best in the country at what we do over there. And if you're going to be part of that punt block unit, there's an expectation, from how you drill, your mindset. And it's got to be like, when you're getting after it, it's like you're a shark and there's blood in the water.
I love that. Do you, a lot of teams are scared of, and again, I'm on your side. I've been the advocate of sending 8-man blocks or sending, a lot of pressure. And then there's other teams that will draw up, a single twist and they're bringing 3 or 4 guys. And it just doesn't seem in my eyes to do it. What's your mentality? Obviously, if they're sending less players, they're more worried about a fake. But it seems like you guys just say, hey, man, I dare you to do it. Let's see you fake it.
Yeah. So, I think there's validity to every side that you're looking at. I think definitely, if you're going to be really pressure heavy, you also need to make sure that you got all your ducks in a line too, that, because that's the one thing, there's the high risk, high reward type of deal. But I think if you really get things thoroughly mapped out, that you're going to protect yourself against, a lot of the fakes and stuff that may come. And then, the thing is, you're going to have to get that thing off real quick, because there's a lot of guys going to be coming after you over there too. So, I think it's on both sides. I think that, one, that obviously what the mentality you got to have if you're going to be a heavy pressure team, but then also on the flip side, if you're the punt team, that there's also got to be a kind of a gambler's mentality on, do I call a punt fake against this? And if I do, are these guys, can I catch these guys? Or if these guys, got guys locked up on people. So it's, that chess match version of everything.
Yeah, that's so cool. I know we've talked about, the towel drill and stuff is and winning the get off. Is there what is the most key component you think, or do you teach a certain drill that's your favorite? What's your go-to?
I think, we have a progression at what we do. And by the time the season comes along, we basically break off like every week until, we call it our, ABCD phase, which is basically, the ABCD actually started more when things were traditional pro cup style, align, burst, crank, destroy. And, we talk about we don't block punts, we destroy punts over here. And I think every phase, because you can't get to the destroy phase unless you've done the other phases correctly. So what we do is, in a 5-minute period, as even through the very last game of the season, we'll have a 5-minute phase during the week where, half of that will be working our ABC, and it's broken apart by where you play positionally. If you're more of an interior rusher, all the way out to, the guys who are coming off what basically is, D gap type of guys. And it's from there just getting used to just week after week after week. So it's just second nature on how, you're able to react to the ball. You're making sure that, again, just your alignment, that, you're taking that straightest line to the block point over there. So we, really emphasize, just in your initial alignment, is my foot and are my screws pointed to the block point? Because we, it's such a game, it's cliche to say the game of inches, but it's so much so that, you see guys that they're just almost there. And if you go back, it might be because somebody false stepped, or their initial angle, they'll push up and you'll see them have to bend, and it, that takes time. Real big on untying the laces, on just, emphasizing getting low, that, if you can clear somebody's hips and they get on you, then they actually help propel you to the block point. And then just coming out, and the second half of that drill is just our destroy phase, where we're just working just the last like 5 yards of just taking it off the punter's foot, either 2-hand, 1-hand, inside, with a shield guy grabbing you, and you got to reach around. And then we always work with the scoop and score guy. So, there's constantly, talking about that country ball. If we get it blocked, that, everybody's going to go to pick that sucker up. And if you aren't the guy to get it, now you wheel your hat around, you find the most dangerous guy. And if he's not even there, then let's go just escort each other into the end zone and have a party over there.
Man, that's so cool. And yeah, you're right. It is. Sometimes it's, guys get lucky, and it's a matter of a few inches where they take it off the foot, or maybe they've done the right technique and it doesn't work out. So
yeah,
my question with all that is, we talk about staying on a vertical path. I've heard different ways of, blocking punts, and if you're on a vertical path, stay in that vertical path. And if you're not, cross his face. What's your mentality with that stuff? What do you think about crossing face, not crossing face on punt block?
I think, interior rushing, I think it's good just to stay on the side that you're coming. If you're coming away from the punter's foot, I think coming across his body is okay. Usually if the block is coming from the edge to his foot, then trying as much as not to just more to like inside hand flash that instead of trying to cross his body. But you know what? I think in the end too, I want our guys just playing fast. If you get there when you're supposed to get there, how you finish is how you're going to finish. Now, obviously you want them to use the drills and the technique. And I think sometimes that rarely are you going to get that picture perfect drill, like the drill look. I mean, the rep actually looked like the drill, but I do think there's something to be said of just the repetition on how you get there, how you finish that. It might not be as clean. A lot of times, you won't be able to take it straight off somebody's foot. And, the other thing that we talk about, if you can't take it off his foot, then it's just try to match him as far as the angle of where the trajectory of the ball's coming. So, there's just little things like that. And in the end, they kind of revert back to, you hope you've repped it and trained it the right way so that, when it comes down to it, that they'll revert to what they've been taught.
Well, and I think it's that emphasis, like you said, you got to spend 5 minutes every week. I mean, a lot of teams are just like, all right, we're just going to line all these formations now. It's like, you want to be good at something, you're going to drill it and you're going to rep it every week.
Yeah. We believe in it. We hang our hats on it.
All right. So a little bit about your background here. That was awesome stuff. So, and my notes might be wrong here, but it says you were 5'7", 169 slot back coming out of high school and ended up going to a D3 in Wisconsin and transferring back to Hawaii.
That's pretty accurate. That 169 definitely wasn't out of high school, though. It was it was lower than that. But by the time I got to UH, that was probably like that first year I got there too. And just was a crazy experience over there. If you're a kid growing up in the islands, that's the only show in town. And to be able to go walk on after that was just a great experience.
Yeah, and you come from very humble beginnings too, right? Not to digress over that, but I've heard on some of your talks that you had a large family in a smaller house, outdoor shower.
So we had where we grew up until about 9 years old was pretty much like it was wedged between like a banana patch and just it was really humble. But I think the roots over there have never left me because I really look at calling as coaching as my calling, and it's my ministry, if you will. And I think growing up in the islands and the way the island culture is, it's just, I realize when I go out to coach, I'm representing the God I worship, the family name that I represent, and all of the people across the Pacific, because there's not a ton of us out there at this level. And it's something, family is the bedrock of island culture. And, it's the thing about islanders, you go away, everybody's going to be rooting for you over there. And you just think too that what you represent is far greater than just yourself. And it's kind of the perfect match of coming to a place like Army, which, our guys represent something way, way bigger than just themselves too. So, being able to go and have the honor of representing an entire culture is something that I don't take lightly, because, if I continue to do the very best I can and people recognize that, then there's going to be somebody else, there'll be a door open for someone else, another younger guy from the island that'll come out and they'll see that, hey, these islanders can do it.
Yeah, I just think that, to be honest with you, Coach, your personality and your positivity is infectious, as you talked about before. But, that's something really cool. Your sense of self is awesome, and something that I hope to replicate, because the way you do it, it seems very authentic. And I think players feed off that.
Oh, I think just like, just coaching, teaching, everything, what people, I think just the human condition, what you look for is just, like you said, just genuine, in a world full of just sound bites and, memes and all that stuff. You got a lot of flash and very little substance. And in the end, people want what's real. And probably the biggest thing that you always want your players and, younger coaches to understand that, it's so far better to be the best version of you than a counterfeit version of somebody else. And you know what, there's a lot of different ways. I mean, you can be a really energetic rah-rah guy by nature, and you can be a guy that's more low-key and still be phenomenal at what you do. It's the main thing is knowing who you are. And I think that so much lends to kind of jumping ahead to just kind of like when you're coaching specialists, because it's far different than coaching a different position. It's so much of knowing you, knowing your process, not just your the physical process you have to do to kind of get ready for things, but also your mental process to be able to go out and execute at the highest level you can possibly do.
100%, 100%. And you kind of touched on it, and we're going to talk about it too. You're so big into mentality, and that's great to say. And a lot of coaches say, "Oh, we coach, the mental side," but they don't really talk about the little details. And we've kind of discussed the concentration, the breathing.
Mhm.
How do you? And this kind of leads into how do you help them handle a bad day, or how do you help them block out distractions?
Well, I think that one thing that you go through, well, overall for all the kids, even outside the specialists, I think, if you're going to have a really healthy culture in your special teams group, is having everybody embrace the idea that, what, we don't have to play special teams, we get to play special teams. And that's like night and day on just what you're going to be able to do. And when you end up having starters on O&D or like, hey, can you talk to coach so-and-so that, can I get on a couple more, and that's, things are going well for that. Now, as far as it pertains to specialists, I think, one of the big things we always talk about is just to remember that, every rep you take is just independent of the one that happened before and the one that's going to follow. And the importance of just being present in the moment over there. Don't overthink, because as we know, overthinking leads to underperforming. And to just go and just realize too that, what, nobody's expecting you to be perfect. Some of the greatest athletes in any sport will have a bad day. And it's going to be like, how do you respond to those things? I always talk to our guys about just going and having a quality rep, and sometimes you'll do all the right things to have a quality rep and it won't get the outcome you want. And it's just, all right, I'm going to reflect back on what happened. Now, maybe it's something technically happened that was, I gotta get right before the next rep. But other than that, let's just flush that and get ready for the next one to go. And I think it's so important, for a specialist to, like you said, to know who you are, know what your process is, like from pregame on how much you got to warm up, which again, especially young specialists will do way more than they need to just, as you go. And I think one of the ways you can help that is always to have, always to be competing, whether it be in the meeting room doing rock, paper, scissors, or just, we got a concentration grid that we work on, at least once or twice a week. And just from even like drills, because to me, you can never quite, well, you won't be able to mimic what a game is actually like, but so you have to kind of manufacture situations that'll put them in situations that at least will get them used to, not only to being able to compete, but also the pressure that will come with it.
So it's like competition aspect, like you're talking about, whether it's not even on the field, it could be playing games like you're talking about. Yeah.
From when you're
Rochambeau.
charting, I mean, everything to the more you can get guys to compete, to me, the better off you set them for success later on.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that. I do like doing stuff with that, or different games, like playing pig or horse or whatever they can engage in. What do you do with overthinkers, Coach Saturnio? Because I'm sure you've had those specialists before that they are just swimming in their own thoughts and they can't get out of their own way. What do you do with those guys?
Yeah, I think, first of all, I think, as a coach, you got to really grow, in how the brain develops, how sports psychology works. And, because none of us really go through school for that, for the most part. I'm imagining some probably do, but I'd say the vast majority don't. So it's, the impetus on the coach to go out and develop and learn and read and talk to. Like, I'm a big guy of, yeah, you don't need to be the smartest guy in the room, but find out the smart guys and learn on how they do it. So it's something that you got to develop throughout the year as you go from spring through fall camp, throughout fall, to be able to do that. And one is, like Ken Ravizza is he's got this book, Heads Up Baseball, which is, he was one of the first guys that really started, that sports psychology side in Major League Baseball. And he's got this red light, yellow light, green light kind of thing to go. And basically, without going super in detail of it, it's basically like that green light when everything's just going, you're in that zone, like everything, you can't even, the goalpost should be like, well, it feels like it's about half-mile wide and stuff like that. So, and then, but the reality is you're not going to be in that green light phase the majority of the time. And then there's that yellow light where you kind of feel, you don't feel bad, you don't feel great, but there's things that you can get yourself back on track to probably be a little more consistent. And then there's that red light that everybody hits that, it feels like things are going off the rails. And then it's a matter of like, all right, how can I get myself out of this? So as they learn themselves, what are the things that they have to do as far as their process, whether it be like how they got to breathe, how they have to, visualize things. And so, I got all of them come up with a particular word that helps them kind of, if they focus on that, it kind of helps some clarity. And we also share what that word is with each other in the group so that, if they see, and our guys, I'm blessed with a great group that, they're competitors, but they want each other to be the very best they can be. It kind of stems off the kind of mentality we have as a program as a whole that, that we all want to, it's not when we're striving to get that championship ring, it's not because I want it on my finger. I want to put that ring on your finger. And that's, that selflessness that goes on. And, in the big picture from where I'm at in particular here at West Point, those are the type of things that you got, that servant leadership type of mentality that's constantly being ingrained. And it just helps us in our position room along the way.
Well, and that giving them that that feeling of that they have to do it on themselves, right? And help each other, I think is really cool. And having that word, I mean, whether it's a thought or a word, just like you said, a mental cue, we always call it with our guys, but whether they tell themselves, hey, smooth, or hey, lock your ankle out, something to remind themselves to get them back on track.
Yeah. And, we got this, every specialist in the country's heard of, aim small, miss small. I was reading this article by these snipers out there. And so we've changed so one time, a lot of the things that we talk about too, there's a psychology term called, the law of dominant thought, which is basically the thing you're thinking about with the most, that's what's going to manifest itself in its actions. So in regards, that's even in the self-talk you're having, it's not like, oh, don't miss, a lot of times too, and then what do you end up doing? You end up missing. So we always talk about everything that as you're getting yourself ready, there's not an ounce of negativity in there. So we don't talk about aiming small and missing small, because misses shouldn't ever be in the vocabulary. We talk about aim small, hit small. That's what we say up here. And I'd like to say I was smart enough to invent that myself, but I read that article and I heard it, and it wasn't necessarily in those terms, but it kind of stole that from them. Cause like, if you're gonna be a sniper, man, you got some stuff you got to do over there. So I thought it was a great application to that thought process to what, specialists got to do as a whole.
Man, and that's such a cool thing that you just hit on is working with the type of athletes. I've been lucky and blessed to work with very high intellectual athletes, being at UC Davis and Rice, some of the smartest kids in the country. But you're working with an entirely different group of athletes and students that are extremely smart, and then they're extremely driven, motivated, and they don't mess up. What is that like? Or is that, can you see the inklings of like, oh yeah, this guy is going to be a leader, this guy is going to be, take control of situations? Like, what is that like?
I think, there's a lot of different ways. Like, to put it in like coaching. So you got a guy like Tony Dungy, who was just like, guys never heard him cuss, he rarely raised his voice, extremely successful. Then you get guys on the opposite spectrum, super fiery. And, it goes down to, I think, as a coach, what we have to do, and leadership's the same way. I talk to our guys all the time about that, you can't be somebody you're not, just like we talk about, be the best version of you. However, you have to be able to be comfortable with being uncomfortable, even in leadership roles, that, it's okay. You can be that effective leader that's more low key, but not everybody's going to be low key. If you've truly invested in the people you're blessed to lead, not everybody's going to have your personality. Some you're going to have to stick a shoe up their ass sometimes. And that might not be your way of doing things. But like what I talk to our guys about, it's like when you're constructing something, whether it be a house, whether it be a successful life, the more tools you got in your tool belt, the more, you'll be able to build. And I'm like, you're not going to need a hammer and everything that you have to do to build something. But if a hammer is required, you better darn well have a hammer with you. So you talk about that. And then I think it's just in coaching, is for us, having the kids find who they are. You can talk about it. Like, I think they run in parallel, like who they're supposed to be as players, but more importantly, find out who they're supposed to be as people. And you gotta, I think, help them identify that in their strengths, and obviously we got all strengths, we got weaknesses, and to help them navigate along the way. And I think when they improve on that personal side, just the extension of that is how they're going to be successful as athletes.
So it's almost self-actualization, teaching them to realize, hey, this is who I am. This is what I struggle with on a day-to-day basis, and relating it to football.
Yeah. And then it's our job to help them realize that, and, put them in situations where, again, some are going to be uncomfortable, but, that's where growth occurs. Right. And then also, to magnify the strengths that they do have, use the strengths you got. And so, it's a great thing. I think the more you can look at things holistically and then just compartmentalize, like, okay, here's, whatever position you're coaching, I think that's really important, because in the end, we're in the people development business. A lot of times, we get so focused in on the job we got to do, X's and O's wise, that that can never take the place of us serving our players and helping them become who they're supposed to be. At least that's my thoughts on the whole thing.
Man, spoken like a true teacher. I hear it coming out of you. And
Yeah.
and that really, to me, what I've seen that makes some of the best coaches is guys that have spent time at, as just an educator, and obviously coach too. But, I mean to boast, but I taught a few years of high school, 2 years. But what did you learn specifically from your time as a teacher? I mean, you did it for 20
Oh,
plus
I was
years,
like
right?
19 years.
19
I was in the
years.
public school system for 19 years. I think one, as a teacher, one thing you learn is that, you got a bunch of individuals that come in. They're in your class, but your class is made up, and it's no different than your football teams. You got a bunch of individuals. And what Zig Ziglar, the famous motivational speaker, talked, something to the effect about, people don't really care as much about what you know until they know how much you care. And I think that is coaching is just so much of just investing and pouring into the lives of kids, especially now, you got the family structure of how a lot of these kids have grown up. You got a lot of kids with trust issues. A lot of, believe it or not, a lot of our players got trouble with male authority because of, not having, necessarily a strong one in their life, or one that maybe, threw the deuces up and took off and stuff. So I think, from my time in teaching was just, one, treat every kid that you got, love them unconditionally. Now, you can love people. That's one thing too. Like, people hear the word love and they think this soft stuff. There ain't nothing soft about love. It's that care about them, that one, you'll always, you'll be the first one up there to hug them when things go well, and your shoe will be the first one up their backside when they start slipping. It's telling them always what they need to hear, even though what they need to hear won't always be what they want to hear. And part of loving them is just, always being there for them, but also helping them navigate when they got to deal with consequences, either the good ones, the bad ones, the in-between ones. So that, knowing your players individually, that's just as a teacher to me, because you'll find out, what motivates them. And I think all the great ones can do that. They have a great pulse of what gets their people going. They know the things that worries them, that excites them, all that kind of stuff. And then I think what you want to do is you want to always find ways to allow them to taste success. Find out what they do well, start with that, and then put them in positions where they can excel at that. And this could be like, we talked about like, kind of specialists, but it's almost like on your kickoff coverage, there's, you got a bunch of different kids. Not every kid can be the skimmer. He might not be loose enough to do that, but, I think teaching is always, starting with find out what they can do well. They called that islands of competency back in when I was a teacher. And it's so basically find out what they do well and put them in a position where they can do what they do well. And then, use that as the building block, always start from where they're at and just build from there.
Sure. Essentially finding a role for him, right? Like Ed Davis would say, hey, let's find a role, find what this guy does well and make him really apply himself, whether he's a backup, trying to find a spot on the punt return team or punt block team. I'm sorry.
Yep. You got it right. You got it right now.
Kickoff team. Yep. Or whatever role, really adapting to. We had a few guys this year where he, this kid named Jeremiah, who's our L2 on kickoff, and man, he set that edge. He was a running back. He was kind of reserve running back, 6 foot, maybe 210, but he would run full speed into those, wedge guys on the kickoff return team and set that edge, force that ball back inside. So, yeah, that is really cool. Well, okay, so tell me a little bit. So you've gone to a few different new places, and I love what you said about, the players buying in because they find out that you care about them. But it's hard when you come to a new spot, right? For example, Army or Georgia Southern, to express, hey, right at the bat, I love you guys and I care about you. And that might seem a little fake because it takes time to grow that relationship. So how do you show that, or how do you create excitement with that?
I think you come in, I think one, everybody feeds off enthusiasm, you know what? And, one of the models of of the sauce team is if you're juiceless, you're useless over there. So, you come out and obviously trust is always going to be built, whether it's on a football team, in the classroom, in an organization. And it kind of really goes hand in hand with what we talked about earlier. Everybody's looking, and it's sad that we live in a society that everybody's kind of looking like, this is going to be a little bit too good to be true kind of stuff. And I think it always just comes down to consistency. Just you keep pouring into their lives every day. You find out, again, trying to get, even if, like, for instance, as a special teams coordinator, you get to work with every single kid in the program, every position, so on and so forth. And it's just being able to have time where you individually spend some time intentionally finding out all the kids, find out what hometown they're from, what high school they're from, and because it's like what I share with our guys as, they go into being officers in the Army, people, what you end up wanting to develop is that transformational leadership in our players. And we cannot transform lives of kids unless our lives are transparent to them. That's what I believe. And that transformational leader will be the one that can bring out the best of these kids, help them along the way become the best versions of themselves. Because a lot of times, adults, not every adult knows what the best version of themselves is supposed to look like. And we need, help people to help us, guide us along the way with that. So I think doing that and going back, like what I share with our guys is like, a lot of people leadership is based on just transactional leadership. You do this for me, I'm going to do this for you, versus, no, man, it's not about that. I want to be the guy that helps you become the best you. And we shared that when they go out in the Army, the people they're blessed to lead are going to expect them to take an interest in the job that they have to do for them, that transaction that has to occur. But they won't expect when they're going up and asking about, hey, tell me a little bit about like where you grew up and things like that, because now you got a layer of investment now that goes much beyond just the transactional phase of the job that they have to do. And I think going back to your original question, that's how you do it. You right off the bat just got to show that, you know what, I'm here to transform and not just to have a transaction that's taking place.
Well, I know 100% being an ex-specialist, that little buy-in from a coach, especially who a lot of times, and I'm sure they're not in your program, but I've seen a lot of places where, they are 120 of 120 on the team. They sit in the back row and they're just kind of kicked to the side. But anytime I had a coach reach out to me or ask me about my hometown, when a lot of the time I was far away from home, like, man, that felt good and it made me buy in. So I definitely agree with that.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, that's
Absolutely.
awesome. Well, I've got a few Coach, one thing I love about you, you got a lot of proverbs, you got a lot of coachisms. And so I'm going to throw some of them at you. This is one of our new segments. I'm going to throw them at you. And you just, in a few words, tell me what that means to you. Okay. Does that sound good? All right. One of yours is everyone comes to work, but not everyone comes to work. What does that mean?
It means, like, it's a difference between kind of hearing and listening. Everybody can hear, noise, everything externally. Listening is what you do actually, where you fully got involved and you were present enough. And to me, that becomes that deeper investment that you have. So, it's a difference between, you show up. It's like saying, all right, I tell the guys all the time, never mistake activity for accomplishment, because a lot of times activity will masquerade itself as accomplishment. Just showing up doesn't mean you've done anything.
Sure. And actually applying yourself to that, right? Okay. What about low expectations cannot survive high standards?
Ooh, baby, that's got to be the hallmark of everything too. If you got, well, it's actually kind of flipped around.
I was gonna say, I
high
flipped it.
expectations cannot survive low standards.
There you go.
And that's the thing too. There's no change your dream. If you're not going to have the standard that is required for the dream to come true, change the dream, because you're only fooling yourself. And it's true that you can have the highest expectations in the world, but if they're not matched with the standards you need to achieve them, then they'll never happen.
Sure. Yeah, you got to put in the work to get to those standards, right, and make it happen. What about and I might be botching this one, but this is male by birth, man by life, or man by
birth, man by choice.
Man by choice.
So that's basically comes off like, for us now, speaking of the sport we play, and obviously it's vast majority. Now I know there are some females that play it, but what that basically is saying, that just our genetics create who we are as that'll label us as males, right? But the man, that's a choice we make. There's younger people that, and when you talk about the man, that's that one, that man built for others, that man built for service, the one that doesn't take the easy route, they take the righteous route. They're looking at, how can my existence in this world leave this world better by the time I'm done with it over there. And that's a choice we make. So on the flip side, you got guys get me into the 80s and 90s that got no idea on what being a man is about.
Yeah, 100%. You mentioned this one earlier, but it's, saying something to the effect of, you might not always have a hammer, but if you need one, you better have one or better use it.
Yeah. And that's just a matter of just, force yourself to learn to be uncomfortable with things, because that's where the greatest growth takes place. And, allow yourself to grow in areas that you might not be really good at, but you need to have some type of competency in them, because, life will throw you way more curveballs and serve you up fastballs. So you better be ready to be able to hit that hanging curve over there. And you're doing that by just the more tools you have, the more things you can do and accomplish.
100%. And you also have said before that you have a PhD in sauceology and that you are Dr. Drip. What does that look
Dr.
like?
Drip. That's what they say. Hey, and I don't deny it. I just supply it, baby.
I love that. What does that look like on the field, Coach? Is it in the fit that you got on? Is it the energy that you bring? What is it?
Oh, it's just, in Polynesian culture, we got what's called mana, which is basically that spiritual power. And that's just something that comes out. it's an enthusiasm that's infectious, that, if you're even in that near vicinity, you're going to get caught up in it, because it's something that I think everybody wants to be part of, something that just gets them going, makes them excited, makes them feel valued and worth, and, that gives you cause for living. And, being able to go out and spread that enthusiasm, spread that aloha, serve it up daily. And it just makes everything around you better.
Yeah. Yeah, it is. And as you said before, it's infectious and it gets everyone going. Something a little bit aligned with the enthusiasm aspect. And I'm really wondering about this. Being a young coach, I've gotten the chance to, in spring ball, to let me, in a scrimmage, to let me call, punt calls or kickoff calls. But when you have a group, normally it's kickoff and kickoff return, right? And the stage is set and the people are rocking. It's easy to be super excited and up tempo. Are there times when you have to calm guys down and say, hey, let's focus? What are those times? Can you think of an example where you'd have to do that? Or are you just always guns blazing? Let's go. Let's get hyped.
Well, I think you always got to have that. That's a great thing that you bring up, because you need it's like, so Custom Auto used to train Mike Tyson, all right, back in the day. So when Mike Tyson was coming up, believe it or not, the great Mike Tyson, who everybody feared, especially when he was younger, was a real insecure guy. And in fact, was really scared of a lot of things. And Custom Auto came up, had this quote that he told him. And he said, like emotions, fear being some, enthusiasm, a lot of them are just same things in different degrees. They said it's like fire. If you learn how to harness it, then it can cook your food, it can warm your house. But if you let it go out of control, it can burn everything down that's around you. So I think that what you have to do as a coach is you just got to be really good. You got to be that thermostat for them, because you got to know when it's running maybe too high, when it's too low, that they need, and it's just going there. So I don't think there's any particular time or instance. It's just knowing your guys. If you feel they're kind of maybe too wound up, that, because you don't want to be running down like a blind dog in a meat house over there. You got to have this focused, this controlled aggression as you're going to go execute out there. And if it goes, it's just like Custom Auto was saying, if you let it go out of control, then it's usually not going to work out too well, because then you're going to get your missed assignments. You're going to get stuff that, you overly aggressive isn't a good thing. Controlled aggression is.
Yeah, 100% controlled aggression. That's what football is, right? And doing it in a great way. So, well, Coach, I've had an awesome time riffing back and forth with you. It's always fun to talk to you. I've got a few more questions here before we wind down. Different segment, same sort of idea. I'm going to throw you a couple quick questions, and you can tell me in a few words, what does this mean to you, or how it shaped you as a coach. Okay, so coaching wise, is this everything what you've dreamed of, or what's the harsh reality of coaching?
I think it is, because it allows me to live my mission in life. And my mission is just to go and empower people to lead and help people to find the best versions of themselves. I'm just blessed that I can do it on a football field.
Yeah. I love that. What are some fundamentals of coaching that you think are overlooked? Could be in special teams, could be in any field. What do you think is overlooked?
I think outside of the X's and O's part, because I think so much of it's devoted to the X's and O's, I think probably in the player development part, the people development part, because I think that a lot of the X's and O's things that people want to see manifest themselves in practices and games will be able to come a lot quicker and probably be much more sustainable, if there's that really authentic relationship that's developed between the coach and their players. Again, it's a blessing to lead and serve. I think, sometimes we're in a profession that's so caught up with the bottom line stuff. And sometimes I think people forget that, you can't get to the bottom line. If it's in a people business, you better put the people first.
Right. And that's kind of what we've been talking about, right? I mean, almost the whole time it's been about building relationships and how you do that. So what about your experience from either high school to here at Army or Georgia Southern to here, what's the biggest difference from going to like a small school to a big school? What's the best thing? What's the worst thing?
I think there's just for one, no matter where you go from high school to various levels of college, it's kids every place has their different things that'll cause issues. Like over here, like for us, time management over here, our guys, you talk about having to maximize your time down to the minute. I mean, that's what our guys have to do, and you got to be great at doing that. And so you got challenges that are different depending on the places that you go. And it comes down to where you go to a place like where we were before, our kids had more time, so you could see more players up in the office watching film. Our guys up here, it's funny, you talk about, hey, don't turn the X's and O's into rocket science. Well, we got some rocket scientists over here too that got to focus on rocket science before they can get up here. So you got that thing. And then as you coaching in high school now, the vast majority of those kids aren't going to go on to the next level to play. And then so the focus is there too, especially. I think it has to be the focus no matter what level you're on. But I think it's more paramount that you leave them with tools that they can be successful in the game of life when they leave. And that's one of the things I've always shared with every player that I've coached, that, I think for us as coaches, if all our players ever got out of us was they got to be better football players, then we tragically failed them over there. And, I think what's another thing that, we talked about too, about investing in the lives of our kids. It's like, so often we expect by just kind of talking about things that somehow they're going to manifest themselves into, reality. And, speaking more specifically, character wise. Now, I look at it the same way as this. Now, we would never just trot a kid. We would never just talk about a particular play and then never practice it. Then all of a sudden on Saturdays or Friday nights, if you're in high school, call the play and expect them to do it well. Yet it seems like that's what we do all the time in terms of who we want them to be as young men. We'll talk about it. Well, you know what? Talking about it ain't going to be that. Like one of the things our guys do, like I'll always ask our guys, all right, tell me something you did today that served the people that were around you. And we're talking about people that you can't get anything. You're not going to get nothing back from you serving them. And then it's those kind of things, be intentional. It's just like, taking intentional reps as a specialist. It's, if you take intentional reps both in the physical and the mental game, then you're going to put yourself in a great position to be successful. And I think that's the exact same thing that we have to do in creating the type of men that this world needs. Like, we better be practicing that stuff. And you can do it. I mean, obviously you can't spend a ton of time on it, but it's not necessarily the quantity of time, but the quality of time that you do it. And be intentional. Have them go and say, hey, when you come back tomorrow, I'm going to ask you this. So make sure that you go out and you're going to be able to tell me something that you did X, Y, or Z. And I think the more you do that, the more things that we're going to see. Because the game's going to leave them a lot quicker than they all think it is, right? But, being a man will never leave them. That's what. So again, can't just be a male. Hopefully we can be the men that they're supposed to be.
That's good. Yeah. And it's developing. I love that question, or just asking your players questions. It means like, hey, something outside of football, what are you doing to better yourself or better others around you? That's really awesome. My last thing, being, a family man, what do you, in coaching at that highest level, what do you do to, how do you balance family time? How do you balance all the work life stuff? What do you do for your family?
That's, one, God bless my wife, Sharon, because, coaches' wives and coaches' children, they have to sacrifice a ton, because they're sharing their husbands, their dads, with everybody else's kids a lot of times. I think it's, as a coach, what you need to do is, one, be non-negotiable in the time that you're going to be spending with your family. Now, even if it's like, hey, dad's on, I'm going to be home for We're going to eat dinner together. We're not going to look at our phones. And then dad's got to run back to the office or whatever the case may be. But, you know, just being there, one of the tragic things that you don't want your players to end up seeing, and even worse is your children to see, is that, you know, you're physically present, but mentally and emotionally absent. You know, it's like what we talked about kind of at the beginning of the podcast about being present, you know, just as a specialist, like being there, just focus in on that moment. And you know what? Our families deserve 100% of us 100% of the time when we're there, you know, and that's the thing. And, you know, it's easier said than done because we live in, we're in a profession that pulls you all sorts of ways. And we said, like, it is a bottom line industry. But you know what? The fact of the matter is the programs we coach for will be there with or without us, but our families won't. And we can't put so much emphasis on, you know, coaching our teams and not forget that the most important team that needs us as a coach is the one under our own roof.
Yes, 100%, 100%. Man, there's some great lessons in there, Coach Saturnio. I can't thank you enough for coming on the IMK podcast. Is there anything you got going forward that you want to mention or plug or?
No, man, it just blessed to be able to do what I do. Just, yeah, I appreciate you bringing me on. And, you know, in Hawaiian, the word is called mana'o, just, you know, sharing some thoughts out there. And, you know, job is to serve, you know, whether it be our players, the community, you know, people that listen to this podcast. You know, I've been extremely blessed. I've seen some very highs in my life and have walked through some very low parts. And, you know, all of that just kind of helped hone a perspective that I got. And, you know, I know what I'm built for, what I'm created for. And I realize, you know, that, you know, what I do isn't who I am. And I just want to go, you know, do my part, that in the end, God can look at me and say, my good and faithful servant. And I did what I needed to do. So,
yeah. Well, that sense of self and that understanding, Coach, that I respect that a lot. I look up to that and you know, look to you as a mentor in this profession. So thank you again.
Well, I'm proud of you too, man. I know the route you've been on, and just keep grinding away. You know, there's even more on the horizon for you, baby.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Appreciate it. That's been Coach Sean Saturnio on the Iceman Kicking Podcast.
Aloha, beat Navy.
Beat Navy. All right. Thank you, Coach. A word from our sponsors. This show is brought to you by The Kicker's Bible. The Kicker's Bible. Ever wondered about how many kicks you should do during practice after pulling your quad multiple times? Repeatedly snapping the ball over your punter's head? Keep getting dumped by all your girlfriends for missing kicks? Well, we can't help with all those things. But for some of those, there's The Kicker's Bible. Proven training methods and secrets used by NFL specialists, written by yours truly, Brett Arkellian, with over 20 NFL specialist accounts, including personal excerpts from record-setting and Hall of Fame specialists David Akers and Shane Graham. If you are interested in any of these fantastic tips and excerpts discussed in this episode, visit IcemanKicking.com or go to my Twitter bio, Iceman_kicking.